Dear students, now let's discuss this chapter, The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen, in detail. It was bitterly cold, snow was falling, and darkness was gathering. For it was the last evening of the old year, it was New Year's Eve. These lines tells us that it was winter season and it was the last day of the year, means 31 December, and New Year was about to start. In the cold and gloom means darkness, a poor little girl walked bareheaded and barefoot through the streets. The girl was poor, she was bareheaded, means she had no cloth or scarf to cover her head. She was barefoot means she was without slippers. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she left home. But what good were they? They had been her mother's, so you can imagine how big they were. Means the slippers belonged to her mother and they were not of her size. The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. One sleeper could not be found, and a boy had run off with the other, saying that it would come in very handy as a cradle some day when he had children of his own. So, children, through these lines, we come to know that when the girl tried to save herself from fast moving carriages, carriages means the vehicles that are used to carry goods, uh, she lost her sleepers. One sleeper was lost somewhere on the street, and the another sleeper was grabbed by a boy. And it's really funny, the boy says that he would use this sleeper when he would have his own children. Here the word cradle has been used. uh, Cradle means a place where we keep the small children when they sleep. So the little girl walked about the streets on her naked feet. Naked feet means barefoot without wearing slippers, which were red and blue with the cold because it was winter and it was December month when winter is always at the peak. In her old apron, she carried a great many matches and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. It means from these lines we come to know that the girl is in the street to sell the matches. Nobody had bought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day. Means the girl left home in the morning. Throughout the day, she tried to sell matchboxes, but nobody bought any matchbox, and she was not able to earn even a single penny. She crept along, shivering and hungry, the picture of misery. Poor little thing. Here we can easily imagine the condition of the girl. It was very poor. She was shivering, trembling in cold because she was not wearing warm clothes, and she was hungry. She did not eat anything throughout the day because she had no money to buy food, and she had to sell her matches, which she could not. The snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck, but she did not think of her appearance now. Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose in the street, for this was New Year's Eve and she could not think of anything else. These lines means that the flakes of snow covered her long, fair, beautiful hair, which fell in beautiful curls around her neck, but she did not think of her beauty or of the gold. Lights shone from every window, and she could feel the delicious smell of roast goose being cooked for New Year's Eve in all the houses. She could not stop thinking about it. It was New Year's Eve, and everybody with their friends and family were enjoying in their comfortable houses, but the little girl was outside in the streets because of her poor condition. She huddled down means held her arms and legs close together and sat down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, one of which projected further out into the street than the other. But though she tugged her little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. It means she sat means in a corner between two houses she sat down. She tucked her little feet underneath herself, but still she grew colder. She was shivering, trembling because of cold. She did not dare to go home, as she had not sold any matches and could not bring any money. Her father would be sure to beat her, and besides, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them, and the wind whistled through that, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags. Her thin hands were almost numb with cold. If only she dared pull just one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall, and warm her fingers. Here we come to know that the father of little girl was very strict, and he would certainly not be pleased. He could be sure to beat her. Besides, it was cold enough at home also, as they had only a roof above them that was full of holes. Her little hands were almost numb with cold. She thought that a match might warm her fingers if she lit it. She pulled one out, scratched, how it spluttered and burnt. Here, spluttered means soft sounds of match when she strikes it against the wall to burn it. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle when she held her hand over it. But what a strange light! It seemed to the little girl as if she were sitting in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments. The fire burned so beautifully and gave out such a lovely warmth. Oh, how wonderful that was! The child had already stretched her feet to warm them. 2. When out went the flame, the stove vanished, and there she sat with the burnt match in her hand. Means when the match girl strikes the first matchstick for the first time, it is burnt with a bright flame. It looks like a tiny candle when she holds her hand over it. It is indeed a strange kind of light. It seems to the girl as if she was sitting in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs. It was a source of wonderful, lovely warmth. However, the flame goes out quickly. The stove vanishes, and she finds herself sitting with the burnt match in her hand. This paragraph highlights the wish fulfillment of the girl. All through the cold evening, the girl had been thinking of a cozy place where she could warm herself. The wish of the girl is fulfilled in a kind of dream or fantasy. She struck another. It burnt clearly, and where the light fell upon the wall, the bricks became transparent like gauze. 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 Gauze here means light, transparent material, usually made of cotton or silk. She could see right into the room where a shining white cloth was spread on the table. It was covered with beautiful china, and in the center of it stood a roast goose stuffed with prunes. Prunes, Prunes, means a dried fruit, especially plum, and apples steaming deliciously. And what was even more wonderful was that the goose hopped down from the dish, waddled across floor with carving knife and fork in its back, waddled straight up to the poor child. Then out went the match, and nothing could be seen but the thick, cold wall. First imagination of the girl is an iron stove. And here in this paragraph, we come to know that the girl has again lost in imagination. She rubbed another match against the wall. It burnt brightly, and where the light fell on the wall, she could suddenly see into the room, means the wall became transparent. A snow white cloth was spread on the table on which were laid beautiful china plates, while a stuffed roast goose cooked away and made a most delicious smell. And what was more delightful and wonderful, the goose jumped. Here there was a word waddled. Waddle means to walk with small steps. So the goose jumped from the dish with knife and fork and waddled. Waddled here means to walk with small steps along the floor straight towards the little girl. But the match went out then, and nothing was left to her but thick, damp wall. This imagination of the girl shows that how hungry the child is. She has been thinking of food all day long, and now there is some kind of wish fulfillment for her through this dream. She struck another match. This is the third matchstick which she strikes, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and much lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of the rich merchant's house. 1,000 candles lit up the green branches, and gaily colored balls like those in the shop windows looked down upon her. The little girl reached forward with both hands, then out went the match. The many candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. One of them fell, streaking the sky with light. In this paragraph, we come to know that when the match girl strikes the third matchstick, she finds herself sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. In the previous year, she had seen a lovely Christmas tree in a rich merchant's house when she peered through a glass door. But today, the Christmas tree looks much more lovely and charming. 1,000 candles are stuck in the branches, and bright colored balls are hanging down. The little girl is tempted, means attracted, and she tries to reach forward with both her hands. Suddenly, the vision changes. The match goes out, and all the candles on the Christmas tree are transformed into lovely stars. One of the stars falls, streaking the whole sky with light. Now, someone is dying, said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever been good to her, but who was now dead, had said, whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. The little girl remembers the saying of her dead grandmother, whenever a star falls, a soul goes up to God. This imagination makes us feel that the child is also imagining her imminent death and upward movement of her soul. She struck another match on the wall. Once more there was light, and in the glow stood her old grandmother. Oh, so bright and shining, and looking so gentle, kind, and loving. Granny, cried the little girl. Oh, take me with you. I know you will disappear when the match is burnt out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the lovely roast goose, and the great glorious Christmas tree. Means there is a sparkle of light when the match girl strikes the fourth matchstick. She can clearly see her gentle, kind, and loving grandmother in the glow of light. The girl cries out that her granny should take her along to her own world, in the world of God. She is afraid that her grandmother might vanish as the warm stove, the roast goose, and the Christmas tree had vanished earlier. Then quickly she struck all the rest of matches she had in the packet, for she did so want to keep her grandmother with her. The matches flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than broad daylight, and her old grandmother had never seemed so beautiful or so stately before. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, oh, so high, towards glory and joy. Now they knew neither cold nor hunger nor fear, for they were both with God. Here, the innocent little girl, she burns away all the matches in the pocket in order to keep up the vision of her grandmother. This shows her deep attachment to her grandmother. The matches flare up with such blaze, means they burnt with such beautiful light that it looks like broad daylight. Her old grandmother looks extremely graceful and majestic in this light. She takes the little girl in her arms and flies away towards glory and joy. Now they were away from the real world of cold, hunger, and fear. Both of them were safe and happy with God. But in the cold dawn, in the corner formed by the two houses, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips, dead, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a packet had been burnt. This paragraph tells us that the next morning the little girl was found frozen with a smile on her face. She had died on the last evening of the old year. She was evidently trying to warm herself, people said, but no one knew what beautiful visions she had seen and in what a blaze of glory she had entered with her dead old grandmother into the heavenly joy and gladness of a new year. When the next morning passers-by found her dead, they remarked that she was evidently trying to warm herself. They could only guess, but nobody knew about these beautiful visions, and nobody could imagine that her old grandmother had taken her away to a world of heavenly joy. The people could only see her sitting in the corner formed by two houses. Her rosy cheeks and smiling lips might indicate that she had died in a blissful state. Perhaps the writer is giving a message through the story of the little match girl. It is possible that the writer thinks of the physical material world as a house of sorrow and the spiritual heavenly world as a house of joy. Whatever the truth may be, it is certainly a story with an unexpected, unpredictable ending. This story shows the uncaring attitude of the rich people towards the poor. The story gives us the message of developing a truly charitable outlook for the betterment of society as a whole. Children, I hope you have understood the chapter nicely.